Hi guys. So today I am going to be talking about the New Zealand Indigenous peoples, the Maori people. So first we're going to start out with the learning outcomes. So it is my goal that after this presentation, all my peers will have gained new knowledge on the Maori people of New Zealand. Hopefully, everyone will learn what the Maori people believe in terms of spiritual traditions, the history of their language, their beliefs and worldviews, and how their culture as a whole came to be. So, some things to note about the Maori people before getting into the presentation is although they are not a very well-known group of people across the world, their population is still highly prevalent in New Zealand and they are largely represented in New Zealand sports. Also, the best way to learn about the Maori culture is to visit a marae, which is a tribal meeting ground. So, the first topic that we're going to cover today is the Maori culture. So, the Maori culture is made up of many different things. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Some are exclusive to just their culture, but some are closely related to other cultures that are more familiarized within our society, such as the Indigenous people. That's the group of people that I related to the most throughout my research. So, the history of the culture. The first and most important fact about their culture is that it is one of the youngest in the world. It was in the 13th century when the first Maori person voyaged in canoes from East Polynesia to discover New Zealand. Those first people settled around the east coast of New Zealand. Legend says the first landing was in the Hokianga Harbor in the far north. The culture originated with those voyagers only around 700 years ago, so obviously compared to other cultures, this one is quite young. So pictured here is the Maori voyage path. So there are lots of red lines here showing different pathways, but these two are the main ones that showcase them going to New Zealand. And that was just the path that they took from East Polynesia to New Zealand. So we are going to talk about the importance of mana. Mana is the word that represents the idea of personal, sacred force or spiritual essence. It exists in all things, including animals, people, land, and even inanimate objects. Mana is gained, and there are two ways to gain it. The first is that the Maori people can get it from their families or ancestors. Second is gaining it from personal wealth. Much like the Indigenous culture, there is no resource more significant to the Maori people than the land. And this is a core concept behind many of the traditions that they have. So now we're going to talk about dance within the Maori culture. So dance does play a big role in the Maori culture. It is assumed that most people have heard of haka, which is a ceremonial war dance which consists of synchronized stomping and chanting combined with physical motions. It is usually used to intimidate competitors, but it is also used for more than just that. It's often used to greet guests, honor significant achievements, and pay respect at occasions or funerals. And the picture that I included here is a picture of them doing this haka dance at some type of in New Zealand sports event. I'm not really sure which one, but like what I stated in the previous slide, it's important in New Zealand sports, the Maori culture. So this is just showcasing that. So now we're going to talk about some uncommon knowledge about Maori culture. Maori people do not greet others in a traditional manner like a handshake or a hug, which we often see. Instead, they press their noses and foreheads together. This is called hongi. There's also a shared, which is the breath of life between two people. And the second point is the way their food is cooked is underground. This is called hangi, not to be confused with hongi. Stones are heated with fire embers, and a pit is dug for the hot stones to sit. The food is then placed on top, and this is food such as chicken, lamb, pork, vegetables, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to move this over again. And now we're going to talk about tattoos and how they play an important role in the Maori culture as well. It is said that one can tell a person's social status and family history from their tattoos. A Maori tattoo is called an ichtamoko. It is very unique and communicates things such as tribal messages from ancestors, things like family, tribal affiliations, and the person's social standing. It's meant to be a visual language connecting the wearer to their family tree. And they are mostly on the head just because the head is considered the most sacred part of the body. To wear each tamoko or a tattoo is a declaration of one as a Maori person. So on this slide, I've included a picture of a man who has tattoos all over his face just to showcase that it's super important to be in this part. And now we're going to talk about the belief systems. So the Maori people believe in gods, which represent the sky, earth, forests, and forces of nature. They also believe that the spirits of their ancestors could be called upon in times of need or in war to help them. And there are many legends that exist within this culture as well. So now we're going to talk about their worldview. So it is not possible to say that there is a single worldview in the Maori culture today, but their worldview does revolve around the cycle of the sun. So the rising of the sun, and the journey it makes across the sky and its settling in the west is a cosmic mystery. The cycle is repeated every day, so traditional Maori considered it the basic principle of the world. The sun represents the birth and growth of mana in the world. The birth, rise, death of the sun came to be the primary model for all existence for the Maori people. And there's this thing called the orator's role. So the orator says a speech, and the speech is considered a reenactment of Tain, separating the earth and sky, the means by which the light came into the world. And Tain is the father of mankind. And the orator's words offer guidance, wisdom. He brings his audience out of the night of conflict and into the day of peace and resolution. And now we're going to talk about spiritual traditions. So, Maori spirituality intertwines and influences the nature of life and what it means to be human. It does this in an unfamiliar and outside experience of people in a Western culture. Spirituality may vary from tribe to tribe, and anything associated with the supernatural was invested with tapu, which is a mysterious quality. Most public rites were performed in the open at a marae. The gods were offered the first fruits of all undertakings, and the slaves were occasionally sacrificed to perpetrate them. The dying and the dead were taken to a marae. The body was often laid out to receive mourners who came in hapu or traditional groups. After about a week or two of mourning, the body is wrapped and buried in either a cave, in a tree, or in the ground. And then after a while of the body being buried in wherever it is, the bones are then taken, stripped, and then they are painted red. They were then taken from settlement to settlement just for a second mourning. And then the bones were also given a second burial in a sacred place. It is believed that the spirits of the dead bodies would make a voyage to their final destinations. And the last topic we're going to cover is the Maori language. So the Maori language is actually called Te Reo. Traditionally, it was never written down. This is similar to the Indigenous culture, as we know. The language evolved in New Zealand over hundreds of years, and it was traditionally oral. It was passed down through generations by song, which is called waiata, again, similar to the Indigenous culture. They also use lots of symbols and carvings and knots and weaving. And so pictured here is just different symbols, how to pronounce them, what they mean, and just like the translation, I guess, between how we know them and how they say them. So the history of Te Reo, gotta move this over again. Although there was an emphasis on English, the Maori language still survived. Until the Second World War, most Maori spoke Te Reo as their first language. Political meetings in the 1890s were conducted in Maori. There was even a Maori newspaper. Maori was a major source of borrowed words for the English was a major source of borrowed words for the Maori people. They altered words so they could fit into their language correctly. And English and Te Reo kind of had like a back and forth thing going on. So they had loan words, which are called translations. So some were unnecessary for the Maori people just because they had words and names that were good enough already. And the English language in New Zealand also borrowed words from the Maori and the Polynesian languages, which is where the kind of give and take comes in. They just both kind of took words from each other and made them their own or used them in some sort of way. And then back then, it was a common way of communicating. Early settlers depended on the Maori for many things. So they had to learn to speak their language if they wanted to trade. 1814 was when the first missionaries tried to write the Maori language down. And similar to the residential schools, the Maori language was suppressed in schools, and they got punished if they got caught speaking it. And so I'll just explain the diagram that I put on here. So this one's similar to the other one, but this just showcases letters as we know them and then translated to how the Maori people use them. So it's not too different, but I assume they would have different sounds and stuff, which would then make words sound different. And, oh goodness, here is my works cited page. So I really hope that everyone enjoyed. I'm super excited to see everyone else's presentations as well. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.